Bucks try and stay alive versus the Brooklyn Nets and survive another KD onslaught. Which underdog can come back in their series down 3-2? And what is the best prop on the board tonight? All that and more as we bring you Heat Check, presented by BetMGM and the Action Network. I'm Matt Moore, senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined as always by Chris Raybon and Raheem Palmer. We're going to be bringing you the best insights in tonight's betting action and tomorrow night in the NBA playoffs. Tonight, obviously, the Milwaukee Bucks at home try and stay alive versus the Brooklyn Nets after giving up that huge lead in the collapse in Game 5 as KD went otherworldly. We'll get into that game as well as we'll give you the best insights that you can find. All the information tonight can be found in our app, the award-winning Action Network app. Download it right now wherever you get applications on your mobile device. All right, fellas. So before we get started into our bets for tonight, I do have a question for you. So last night, the Sixers collapsed in epic fashion. They're down 3-2. The Bucks, as I mentioned, are also down 3-2 after a collapse. And the Utah Jazz are down 3-2 after a considerable collapse. So if you've got to pick one, you've got to bet one of the lines. At BetMGM, the Bucks to win their series are plus 195, the Sixers are plus 135, and the Jazz are plus 150 to make it to the conference finals. Which underdog do you have the most confidence in? Raheem, let's start with you.
I'm going with the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, when you look at the Milwaukee Bucks tonight, they're 5.5-point favorites over the Brooklyn Nets. And that gives them about a 70% chance to win tonight. Kevin Durant went out there the other night in a game that they probably should have lost, but, he put the team on his back. He had 49 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists. I mean, he had an all-time great game. I will never say James Harden is better than him ever again in my life. He proved me wrong, but I just don't think it's sustainable long-term. After playing 48 minutes, James Harden really couldn't move. Kyrie Irving is out. I just think the Bucks, they go out there and they dominate them tonight. And then in Game 7, we're looking at a pick'em. We're looking at a game that can go 50-50. So I like the Bucks here at plus 195. I think you have a positive expected value wager. And then not only that, you set yourself up for arbitrage opportunity.
So I get that you have EV and the arbitrage opportunity. I think that's a really great point for a Game 7. However, I just got to ask you, do you really feel comfortable betting on Mike Budenholzer and Giannis Antetokounmpo to close the deal? Is this something that you really feel like you're comfortable with?
I'm not that comfortable. I think a lot of it is the numbers perspective. And, we're all bettors and we're always looking for an opportunity to make money. But at the end of the day, they are 5.5-point favorites tonight. You can't say that about any of the other two teams. So I'm going to trust them. They've been through a lot of pain. They've gotten knocked out early in the last 2 years. So I'm going to trust that they have some pain and they're going to show how much they really want this.
All right. So Raheem likes the Bucks plus 195. Raybon, you got to take one of the dogs. Which one do you think is barking?
I got to go with the Utah Jazz. I mean, Raheem's right. The Bucks been through a lot of pain, but they've also caused my bankroll a lot of pain. Everyone who watches the show probably a lot of pain because we've been on the Bucks pretty much all series. Listen, when I don't like any of these bets in particular, whether it's Bucks plus 195, Jazz plus 150, or Sixers plus 135. The reason I'm picking the Utah Jazz, they were the best team in the NBA all season long. They have to win 2 games. All 3 of these teams have to win 2 games, but Utah has to do it against the Clippers roster that even beyond its top 2 players was pretty shaky to begin with. So when I look at this Clippers team that's going to be without Kawhi for Game 6 and then potentially Game 7, it's like, I see a path to victory. The Sixers and the Hawks, those 2 teams to me are just kind of, the Sixers have been out playing them, but they blew games they should have won. And then, and so it's just going to be a battle. The Hawks are ungodly at home. The Sixers are on the road. And then when it comes to the Bucks, I just don't, Matt, you asked, will Giannis Antetokounmpo's decision-making affect them in Game 6? You wrote an article about it. It's great. Everybody should go check it out. The answer is yes. Antetokounmpo is just not a smart basketball player. I've watched enough of him to notice. I'm just going with the team, with the perimeter player that I trust the most. And without question, that's a banged-up Donovan Mitchell over Giannis, over, Tobias Harris had how many points last game? 4, I think it was. Yeah, no. It's easy Jazz for me.
I've got Raheem Palmer, who thinks that Kevin Durant's overrated, and you thinks Giannis Antetokounmpo, quote, isn't a smart basketball player. This is like a flamethrower contest. Like
He's
who's
not.
seeing which,
I just said that I'm not slandering Kevin Durant ever again.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Durant is better than Giannis right now, easily. Giannis is a 2-time MVP that thinks he's Kevin Durant in the fourth quarters of these games, but he doesn't have a shot. It's like you can't win a championship or even a series versus a team when the opposing perimeter player can shoot and you can't.
So I will take the Sixers, and not just because it's the last one left. I could have easily glommed onto one of your picks, but I'll say this. I can't trust the Bucks for all the reasons that we've kind of gone over. Like, I just can't feel good about them. And I also feel like if this gets into a game 7, it's about who makes shots, and the Nets have more shot makers even without Kyrie Irving. So can't go there. Don't like the Jazz in this situation for a number of reasons. The biggest thing is that the more the series has gone on, even with Kawhi's injury, the Clippers have figured out that the Jazz are entirely scheme dependent. If you get past their scheme and how they want to play, they don't have a lot of counters, especially with Donovan Mitchell not 100%. He's really banged up. The fact that he's playing as well as he has is honestly a testament to how tough he is. Like, if Rudy Gobert could punish a switch ever, if he could score on his own ever, then I would take the Jazz, but he can't. So I will take the Sixers. Look, yes, the collapses have been terrible. None of these teams look like they're in a good spot. That's why they're underdogs. But the Sixers in their wins have been absolutely just dominant, and they had a 26-point lead. I worry about the mental effects here for sure on the road in game 6 versus the Hawks, but if they win that one, I have a hard time saying that the Hawks are going to be able to beat the defense, because when the Sixers have looked good, they've looked awesome. The Hawks won that game last night basically based off of Lou Williams and Danilo Gallinari carrying him for long minutes. I can't feel like that's sustainable. I will go with the Philadelphia 76ers. None of these teams make you feel good about your bet if you're trying to bet them to win the series. Let's go to the big bet, this is our best bet of the night, a side or total on any of the games tonight or tomorrow night in these NBA playoffs that you can choose from. Odds available from BetMGM, our official sponsor here on Heat Check. Raheem Palmer, what do you got?
Okay, you just said it. We don't feel good about any of these underdogs. I don't feel good about the Utah Jazz. I'm going with the Los Angeles Clippers money line. They win this game outright. I mean, this is the biggest over adjustment I've ever seen. So you're basically saying that Kawhi Leonard is worth 7 points to the point spread. I love Kawhi Leonard. He's made me a lot of money on the Toronto Raptors. Shout out to Matt. But he's not worth 7 points. I mean, this game 4 line was Clippers -5, and now they're catching 2. No way. The Clippers, I mean, they've taken over this series with their small ball lineup, and it doesn't matter that Kawhi Leonard isn't there. Gobert has really been struggling. Matt, you said it earlier. Gobert can't beat a switch. Over the last 3 games, he's had plus minuses of -16, -1, and -4. I mean, the lack of playmakers outside of Donovan Mitchell is really a problem. Mike Conley not being there, it just means that they don't have any other playmakers other than Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell is banged up. I mean, this Clippers small ball lineup is just, they're stifling defensively. I mean, offensively, they're rolling. They have a net rating of -31.9, and that's Batum, George, Morris, Jackson, and Mann. They had an offensive rating of 148 in 22 minutes. Like, the Jazz can't stop anybody. And then more importantly, the Jazz are just playing 6 guys right now. I mean, George's Niang, do you trust this guy? Like, Derek Favors has a defensive rating of 143 while he's on the court. The Jazz made 23s in game 5, and they still lost by 8 points. Give me the Clippers. They win this game outright. Chris, I know you're going to slander playoff fee, so say what you got to say.
Yeah, I'm just going to step back and let Chris go.
I mean, like, the backboard, the side of the backboard is getting its magnetic charge right now in LA. Paul, like, you really trust playoff P after he has the game of his life on the road as an underdog to come back to LA and do it all again. Like, you talk about the Jazz having no playmakers. The Clippers don't even have players outside of Paul George. This is crazy to me. Listen, you know, the Jazz were up at halftime. They went cold in the third quarter. They are reliant on the 3. They're going to live and die by the 3. But I trust Donovan Mitchell over Paul George, and the Jazz without Conley and a banged up Mitchell are still deeper than the Clippers, and probably still deeper than the Clippers even when Kawhi is on the floor. I think that was a lucky win in game 5. Straight, like, that's it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see.
All right, well, what do you got for your best bet tonight, Raybon?
So for me, I'm going Milwaukee Bucks. And before I continue and say exactly how I'm betting the Milwaukee Bucks, I just like to show y'all this money. I have this money. I have this lighter. It works. So I'm gonna just go ahead and just do this now. I'm gonna just go ahead and do this now. Let me not burn my house down, but it'll commence shortly. At tip off time. But I'm going Milwaukee Bucks first half. The reason being, that's when they've played well. I don't trust them to close out the game. We've talked about this before. You try to trick yourself into believing Budenholzer can make adjustments. It looks good for a game or two, but I don't think Giannis makes good decisions in the later half of the game. I don't think Budenholzer does either. But if you look in the first half of the last 3 games, the Bucks have been plus 8.0. Over the Nets in terms of their average margin. And then this has always been when Milwaukee has kind of played well. Over in the first half this season, 24, 14 and 2, 63.1% against the spread in the first half, including the postseason. This postseason at home, they're actually undefeated against the spread in the first half at home. They're 3-0 with 2 pushes. So, and then even going back to last season, 41, 26 and 4, 61.2%. So I think the Bucks are going to come out strong again. They tend to play well when early in the game, the pressure's off. But I think, those rims are going to tighten. I think Giannis's head is going to start spinning in the fourth quarter. And it's going to be thrown in a blender with Budenholzer. And everyone's going to be fired when this game's over because Brooklyn probably wins it. But going with Milwaukee, first half minus 3.5.
So my only concern there is I lost Bucks or Nets second quarter in that last game. And I was pretty irritated by it, especially with the Nets winning that game. I'm still mad. I'm still on tilt about it. In the minutes, they sit Giannis to start that second quarter. Okay. So he usually takes a break at the end of the first quarter. He comes out like the 2-minute mark and they get him about a 4 to 6 minute rest until about the 8-minute mark of the second. And in that time, usually with one of Kyrie Irving or James Harden, they don't play KD. And then that unit has been absolutely running the Bucks second unit. Now, if you kind of think like, all right, the Bucks this is an elimination game. They got to go the whole way. They're going to play all their guys. They're all going to like the starters are going to play like 45 plus. You could say that, but I don't know how you can feel that way about Mike Budenholzer ever. Like he just doesn't, his rotations are always a little questionable. Plus foul trouble for Giannis is always an issue. So I can't go with you on this. I get it. I understand the spot, but for me, I'm too worried about the Nets having another good second quarter. They've won, I believe the 5 games, they've won 3 of the 5 and lost. And the other one, they lost by like a point. So can't go with you there, but I wish you good luck in setting your money on fire by betting the Milwaukee Bucks tonight.
Oh, it's burning. It's burning. Nice and slow. It's simmering.
I'm taking Hawks Sixers over 221. So this is the fastest series in the second round. And it's not necessarily a barn burner, but it's up there in terms of pace. They're averaging 99.7 possessions. That's a lot faster than a lot of the other series are going at. So with some of these under hits in the series, it's mostly been like bizarro hits in terms of shooting variance. And that's going to happen in playoff series from time to time, especially when they're doing hack-a-bend, right? Like that's a factor. But the Sixers in wins are averaging a 126 offensive rating. So when they're good, they're absolutely locked on. I don't think Tobias Harris has another game like that. I don't think that the bench has been inconsistent for the Sixers, but that's the whole point is they're inconsistent. Maybe they'll have a terrible game, but all I need is like a little bit from Maxey and Shake Milton for them to be in a little bit of business. Meanwhile, this line is just over adjusted. You look at how this series has been, the line has gone down significantly over the course of the series. And the unders have been hitting, but I think there's been an overcorrection here with it going down so much from where this series started. And even really the last couple of games when it was 220, it went over. But then when it got back up to 228-ish, it's been hitting under. So I think this is a nice spot to buy back the other way. So I like the over 221 in Heat Sixers.
I'm not mad at that because, when you watch game 5, the Atlanta Hawks only scored a point per possession in the first half. And in the second quarter, they really struggled to shoot the ball. They had a 64 offense rating in the second quarter. So I think, that'll normalize. Tobias won't shoot as poorly, and that should go over. I'm with you.
All right. It's time for the wheel. Every week we do our wheel, which is a random set of props. We prep for them all, and we have to say which one we like, the over or the under, based off where it lands. Raheem Palmer, you're first up. Are you ready for the wheel?
I'm born ready. Let's go.
All right, producer Christina, would you please spin the wheel for Raheem? Thank you. All right, Brooke Lopez over under 1.5 made threes.
I'm gonna go with the over. I think my colleague and Brandon Anderson, I think he really likes this one. I think he's really right about this. I think Brooke Lopez, he's been playing out of the paint lately. I mean, and they've been spreading the floor. He's hit 1.5 threes in 3 out of the last 4 games. He's taken 5 attempts in 3 out of in the last 3 games. And then when you look at the 30 games that he's played this season, he's taken more than 5 3-point attempts. And a lot of these props are about volume. So if you're getting the volume, you're going to make it. And then, out of those 30 games, he's hitting 23 threes. So 77% of the time in which he's taken 5 threes or more, he's hitting 2 threes. So I think you have a good chance of him going over this point to going over and hitting these threes. And I mean, the Bucks are at home. They say role players shoot better at home. So I think he gets there.
It's also crazy that Brooke Lopez is a role player after being an all-star in Brooklyn. I actually did a feature on him when he was in Brooklyn. Also, I want a new move. You do not get to add Brandon Anderson props into this thing. They are too automatic. It is not fair to the rest of us for some of the props to be from Brandon Anderson, who has been red hot on the Action Network app in props all season, and especially in the playoffs. I want the Brandon Anderson one. Why don't I get it? That is not fair. Raybon, are you ready for the wheel?
Let's go.
All right, let's spin the wheel for Chris Raybon, please, Christina. Jeff Green, 3-pointers made, 2.5. A lot of 3-point props.
This is what I was hoping for. I'm definitely going under here. Jeff Green had the game of his life in Game 5, and he was a big reason. It's never going to get talked about as much as it should because Kevin Durant was just so spectacular, but Jeff Green was their second best player in that game, not James Harden, which is nuts in itself. But first of all, Raheem, you talked about the Bucks and Lopez, shooting better at home. For Jeff Green, it's the opposite is true because he also shoots better at home. The Nets are on the road, so he's shooting 47% at home this season, but on the road he's down to 38%. So a 9% difference in his 3-point percentage, home to road. And this is the time when I love to bet these kind of unders. On role players when they come off a huge game, when they're at home, then everyone's kind of looking out for them. The other team is kind of a little more, they know they just can't help off of him as much as they did in the last game. Nobody wants to hear about him again. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he makes 0 threes in this game. And if you look at this season, he's played about 28 minutes per game, and he's made 3 or more threes only 24% of the time. So about over 3 in every 4 games. He has not hit this. He would not have hit this prop. I love this one almost to any juice. Like I think this is a great under here to bet to reversion to the mean for Jeff Green in Game 5 on his in Game 6 on his threes.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Definitely the Bucks never get hit by outlier shooting performances like Fred. So let's go ahead and go to mine. If I can get my wheel, I do not want James Harden. Do not have this land on James Harden producers. I know you can't control it. I know it's randomized, but I'm going to be really mad if it's Harden. Yes, Paul George. All right, Paul George assist.
Playoff P.
I'm going under on Paul George assists, 5.5. So a couple things here. One, he had just 9 assist opportunities. I tracked that through the night. Assist opportunities, which is a pass that could have been a shot, got fouled, etc. Just 9 of them. That's a very low number for how much he has the ball for this Clippers team without Kawhi. So he only had, but he had 5 assists. So you're talking about an over 50% conversion rate for assist opportunity to assist. I'll just tell you, that doesn't happen. You're lucky if you get like 40% of your assist tracked. If you get anything above 50%, it was a pretty outlier night. So I don't love that. You've also got the fact that the Jazz are switching more. And so they're unlikely to bring doubles onto George, which means there's not a wide open pass. They did it a little bit at the end of Game 4, and you saw those kicks to the corner for wide open threes. Quinn Snyder is probably going to clean that up. Like, they've got to go into this game and be like, look, if Paul George scores 36, but we shut down everybody else, we're good because they don't have Kawhi. That's got to be the adjustment. Meanwhile, he had 5 turnovers. That was a really good game for Paul George. It was a really great game for playoff P. It was, everyone's like, hey, maybe he's like stepping up now. He still had 5 turnovers in that game on 5 assists. That's not a great conversion rate. I think the Jazz will get handsy in this game. I like Paul George's scoring props because I think he can cook the coverage that the Jazz are throwing at him. Especially, I think he'll do better in space versus Rudy Gobert. But I think he's also going to, if he tries to pass, I think he's going to have some turnovers. I'll take under 5.5 assists for Paul George.
What a twist. We think Paul George isn't going to pass well in an important game. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he'll hit the side of the backboard and that'll convert to assist.
Okay. Right to Zubac for a putback. That might not count. So you'd be
the good. Kobe assist. All right. In our final segment, it's all axiom betting. You got to fade the public because the public oftentimes is wrong. Now, our fans on Twitter tend to be a little bit sharper and they've done very well in this segment, but we're going to put that to the test tonight. We asked you on Twitter, who's going to cover Durant's over under 34.5? The public took the over predictably at 65%. They got a lot of faith in KD. Raheem Palmer, the internet's number one KD hater. I got to ask you, surely you're backing the public and going over, right?
Not at all. I mean, last game I had the Brooklyn Nets because I felt like KD would have a huge game in a must-win spot. Now I can't back that at all. He's coming off playing 48 minutes, which is, really troubling. And I think there's some blowout potential here. I think the Bucks can really blow this team out tonight. And if they blow them out, the Nets might pack it in and get ready for game 7. Also, the last game was just 95 possessions. Would it be a 95 possession? That's a slow-paced game. I think we could see more of the same here. So I'm going to take the under.
Look, I love this Bucks team, and I want good things for them. I like Mike Budenholzer. I like Giannis. But Chris is on first half. You're talking about how it might be a blow. Have y'all seen the Bucks in the playoffs? Like, where is this coming from?
I mean, you got to understand. I had $10,000 on the Brooklyn Nets in game 5. So I'm calling it the way I see it. I mean, these things, it's a series. I mean, it's just one game. I think that the Bucks bounce back. They were up 17 last game. I think they come back and they do what they have to do.
All right, so Raheem has mentioned that he's from Philadelphia and he's taking a victory lap on a bet that he got right. We're close to Raheem Palmer bingo. All right, Chris Raybon, KD 34.5. You with the public or are you going to fade him?
Oh, the public's exactly right. He's going over. I mean, I'm not like, have you seen the Bucks, but have you seen KD? It's like the Bucks have been, playing well at times, but like KD in that last game, like he showed, like that's what he's going to have to do. Harden's banged up. Kyrie's out, and just forget about any other factor. Just with Kyrie off the floor, because we know what Kyrie does, scoring a basketball. With Kyrie off the floor this year, Kevin Durant averages this prop in 36 minutes. He averages 34.6 points in 36 minutes. He played 48 in the last one. I'm not saying he plays 48 again, but it's a possibility. Especially if they're in the game, if they're not completely out of it, or if they're down big early again, which I could see happening. So I just think with Harden clearly laboring, not being himself, he's going to be looking to set up KD. Everyone's going to be looking to set up KD. And look at the way that Milwaukee is playing KD. They are not sending all these doubles and doing all these things. They're living with him going one-on-one and make or miss. And being that it's KD, I just trust that he's going to make enough to get over this. 34.6 in 36 minutes, that's just absurd. So give me the over. The public, y'all on point.
Okay, so in our rundown, when we've done this prep work, I put down that I'd said the under. Chris Raybon's convinced me, so I am changing.
Woo! Oh, we got the cross branding going on because our NFL show is called Convince Me. I like that, man.
You sold me out.
I have been convinced. I am going with the over on KD 34.5. Something interesting. I was thinking about this too, Raheem, on the minutes thing. The Rise to Ricky Sanchez podcast, which is a Sixers pod, was talking about how exhausted Embiid is at the end of the game. And they were mentioning, they're like, if you look at KD after those games, he doesn't look exhausted. If you look at Embiid after these games, he looks exhausted because the way that they play is different. I think that's accurate. They're playing a lot of KD and on defense. He's not taking primary assignments. He's on help defense a lot of the time. And for him, a lot of it is just like, get to your move and take your shots. And like the Nets move the ball enough to where he's not really having to do a whole bunch of tough stuff. It's one-on-one. Yes. But that's easy work for KD. So that combined with that, I can't get over that 34.6 per 36. That's a great stat that Raybon brought. I have been swung. I am with the people. Raheem is on his own trying to fade Kevin Durant. All right, we'll wrap up here. Here's what we got tonight on Heat Check, presented by BetMGM. Raheem Palmer likes the Clippers money line at plus 110. Brooke Lopez over 1.5 made threes at plus 115, and KD on the under at 34.5 points. Chris Raybon likes Milwaukee -3.5 first half, so he can light some money on fire. He likes Jeff Green under 2.5 3-pointers in this game. And he likes KD, though, to pick up the slack and go over 34.5. I am going to take the over in Hawks Sixers 221. I'm going to take under on Paul George assists 5.5. And I've been swung over to Raybon's side on KD over 34.5. This has been a Heat Check presented by BetMGM. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back next week with 2 shows as we continue getting you set for betting the NBA playoffs on Heat Check presented by BetMGM.